Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Evangelical Dark Web. Let's go hot tonight. And we're going to go hot by touching the hot subject that maybe some Christian channels have touched on. I don't know. I don't watch a whole lot of Christian YouTube. I do watch John Harris and a couple others, but I watch a lot of pop culture stuff on YouTube, kind of as like escape and history stuff, kind of as my escapism and stuff like that. But one thing that is very prominent is the Manosphere, and I think it's kind of a false gospelish movement that targets a lot of the same target demographic of Evangelical Dark Web. Evangelical Dark Web skews younger and skews male, so a lot of people may knowingly or unwittingly be influenced by the Manosphere, some of the aspects being good, some of it being not so good. And we're going to confront sort of the not so good seedy elements of that in tonight's live stream. Anthony has an article written, which I imagine we'll go through. It's not published yet, but I imagine we can go through a little bit of what's in that tonight. And we're also going to talk about, sort of the broader Andrew Tate debate, some of the Tristan Tate debate as well, because I want to touch on the argument of moral culpability when it comes to peddling vice. I want to kind of touch on that as well. And I like what Michael Knowles has had to say about it as well. So we're going to do a jam-packed sort of show tonight, but you have a couple names. Obviously, I brought up Andrew Tate and Tristan Tate. You brought up in your article
So the
two names.
two names. So I do talk about Andrew Tate specifically. You have Rollo Tomasi, who that's a pseudonym or a nickname and all, a moniker. And then you have Pearly Things, who's kind of like the female Andrew Tate, but probably not as articulate, which is why I mention her name, but I don't necessarily use her stuff because she's not necessarily the most original or articulate on her own issues. But Rollo Tomasi is kind of known as he's dubbed the rational male, and that's his book, and he has rules. And I even as far as Manosphere figures go, he's up there as one of the Manosphere types and pickup artist. And he actually has I guess I found a debate between him and Ruslan KD, so that I thought that was an interesting comparison.
How'd that debate go? Did you watch enough of that?
I watched the entire thing at like 1.5 or something like that. So, I thought Ruslan did well.
Really?
So overall, I thought he did well at defending a Christian worldview.
It's interesting that he can have a Christian worldview when you're dealing with very not Christian material, but when you're dealing with Christian material, he goes a little woke.
So Bart Barber on CBS or whatever.
No, Bart Barber on CBS went blue and on. Never go full blue and on. So one of the things that we talked a lot about the Manosphere last week when we talked about dating, and Bible Bash was on, and we talked about sort of dating conventions between men and women, which the Manosphere has definitely impacted a lot of that conversation, and Pearl Davis has definitely impacted a lot of that conversation. Although I believe I booked that interview before I was fascinated with the Pearl Davis conversation. But one of the things that we have talked about also is the Jordan Peterson fascination. And he's also kind of seen as like a titan of the Manosphere.
Yeah, I would say that like the three names I'd list as the big three,
the triumvirate,
I guess, and is Peterson would be the first, Joe Rogan is the second, Andrew Tate is the third. And Andrew Tate's, I guess, segment of the Manosphere is basically what's called red pilled, which is kind of like it is a direct play on the Matrix, red pill, blue pill dynamic. So the red, and you'll actually hear like Andrew Tate, even during like the Tucker Carlson interview, he's talking about the Matrix, and he is directly using red pill as a red pill from Neo himself being Neo in the Matrix. So that's the dynamic.
I've seen clips from the interview with Tucker Carlson, but what does appear to be the case is that Andrew Tate is definitely misrepresenting himself in the Tucker Carlson interview. I've seen enough clips. People are saying this is the most viewed interview of all time, and it's like, hold your horses. Like, Twitter views on videos are definitely fake.
Yeah,
Like,
I
if you
mean
see if you see a video in passing, it'll count it as a view.
yeah,
Because the video will autoplay. So those aren't all real views. Doesn't mean there's not a lot of views to them. But you just got to know that when people are saying, "Oh, this is the most viewed interview of all time," no, it's not, because Twitter views are fake. They're even fake on my videos that I post. This live stream might get a couple hundred views or whatever, but it's not like, I don't know how many people actively watch live streams on Twitter, because I certainly do not. But that being said, it did seem to have an impact. A lot of conservatives have started weighing in on the Andrew Tate situation. A lot of conservatives have actually started saying, no, he's a bad guy, and kind of doing the disavow. Stephen Wolf tweeted something satirical as like, Andrew Tate's not a Christian, so we shouldn't be a jerk for Christ. He tweeted something satirical like that, kind of in response to people going after Andrew Tate, but I guess people didn't get that he was being satirical.
Oh, I was gonna guess that. Oh, I guess people didn't think he was joking.
I mean, he did a follow-up tweet that was that people weren't recognizing satire.
Well,
but
he has difficulty with some of the follow-up tweets, I take it.
Very true. Very true. So the first thing I wanted to do was this. Actually, we should just come out and do a little bit of housekeeping. Don't forget to smash that like button, because that really helps with the magical YouTube algorithms during a live stream. But the best thing you can do is subscribe to the channel or podcast if you are new, because new subscriptions are actually some of the biggest drivers of video growth. That is the biggest driver of video growth that I am aware of on YouTube. I don't know how Rumble algorithms work. I know that if you mirror content on the Rumble, it does not reward that in the algorithm. But subscription growth is what drives video growth. That is my impression of how all this works. So, based on experience. So, first thing I want to watch is this video by Milk Bar. And Milk Bar TV, which is an Australian thing, if you don't understand what a milk bar is. This channel put out a compilation of Andrew Tate in his interview with Tucker Carlson, kind of pointing out why he's lying and what exactly the charges are. I think it's a pretty fascinating video put out by Milk Bar, and it I think very adequately frames the Andrew Tate situation. So we're going to play this video, and I want to let you know, if you are in the comment section, feel free to interact, because this is a very conversational live stream. So we're here for the conversations that matter. Anyway, let's roll tape.
Charged with? That's a really good question. I'm charged with being the head of an organized criminal group, which is in charge of recruiting girls to make TikTok videos.
They face charges which include human trafficking, rape, and forming a criminal gang to sexually exploit women.
OnlyFans is the best hustle in the world.
Are they accusing you of using violence or?
No. They're accusing me of using the lover boy method, coercing them by being nice.
I don't mention webcam until after I've had sex with the girl. If you're on dates and you're trying to mention it and shit, it just doesn't work. It puts them off. I'd never do that. That's disgusting. I'm not a whore. It's just not gonna work. You continue as normal, no mention of webcam. You fuck the girl. After you fuck the girl, you do the PhD test.
So yeah, on CobraTake.com I have my PhD program, and that is PhD is a pimp and hose degree that I'm
Clever.
And
Clever.
That teaches basically how I got girls, how I met girls, how I got girls to like me, how I got girls to fall in love with me to work on webcam for me.
And you're always working. Why don't you work for me so we spend more time together? Work for you doing what? So you'll have a webcam business. Oh, I don't want to do that. So okay, I know you don't want to do that, but listen. Come, let's have a meeting. Let's just talk about it. If you don't want to do it, don't do it. Fine. But let me explain it to you properly. In fact, I'll bring one of the girls who works for me. Your bottom bitch is the one who does the selling. You don't do the selling. The girl has to hear it from a girl. And this is where your bottom bitch has to be trained. That's why I said it's so important to have a good first girl.
So I want to pause right there. Obviously, this is framed as he's a pimp. And as you'll see later in this video, he has a nice acronym for what pimping means. And because this is the type of guy he is. a lot of people, don't realize that he made his money through pornography. That is how he made his money. He didn't make his money by being a, kickboxer. He made his money being a pimp.
And he'll kind of explain later on in the video how
Well, he's explaining
lucrative.
his process.
Well, he's explaining the recruitment process, which again, so far we haven't necessarily seen human trafficking. We've just seen recruitment, which I mean, obviously, it does. I mean, it's so logical and how much it makes sense as far as, I guess, how he's going about doing it. He lets a woman make the sales pitch. He doesn't make the sales. So it does make sense.
Well, think about the Jeffrey Epstein situation. Do you know how those girls came to Jeffrey Epstein? It was through the other girls. They created like a pyramid scheme of underage girls that would pimp each other out. And it was basically, do you want to make money? You just got to give weird guys massages at this mansion in, West Palm Beach. Oh. No, I think the plane trips come later. This was on the Netflix documentary, and it's kind of interesting. Like, one of the girls was like adamant that she wasn't guilty for pimping out other girls. It's like she should have been charged. That's just my opinion. But
yeah, but she wouldn't have been. She would have been sex trafficking people to no one.
That is true. But that is what was going on with the Jeffrey Epstein thing. Is like these girls were pimping each other out. So that's what went on. But even with Andrew Tate, it doesn't actually seem like that's actually what's going on with him, because he's actually doing all the recruiting himself. And then he has the head pimp, or his right-hand lieutenant. That's not Tristan. The chief Ho is the one who makes the final sales pitch.
But at the same time, when I saw this the first time, I likened it, if you've ever seen like Always Sunny in Philadelphia, this is the dentist system that he uses. He demonstrates his value. He woos the woman. Then it's E, because it's an acronym for his name. E is engaged physically. That's when he bangs the woman. And he's about to go into how he, I guess, nurtures their dependency. And this is how he recruits them. And then he's going to even go into how he neglects them emotionally. So it's actually quite amazing how close that is to a widespread joke, on like a classic joke on Always Sunny in Philadelphia.
I mean, it is that, but it's also, even older than that.
Yeah.
So, and same Riza says he's bragged about committing all kinds of crimes, but I'm supposed to believe that he's not committing other crimes that he doesn't brag about. And that's true. You see what he brags about. What is he not telling us?
How many children he has? He actually has an undisclosed amount of children. He doesn't actually reveal the number of how many children he has around the world.
Interesting.
Because that's what I did. That was my MO, was find girls, make them love me, and make them work for me. This girl's like, okay, well, I'll try it. Put both girls on camera together the first day, so the new girl can sit there and just sit with the other girl and get drunk. Give him a bottle of vodka.
First night that I worked for him, Andrew bought me like 5 bottles of wine. So I got completely drunk because I'd never done webcam work. So I was very, very nervous.
And that's how I got rich. So that teaches everything I know from start to finish about not only getting girls, not only obtaining them, but retaining them. Because that's a completely different game as well.
And over time, I just built up this big little empire of webcam girls. At one point, I had 4 locations, 75 girls working for me. I'd take around half of the money, around 50%.
You take 50%.
Around 50%.
They thought they were on 50%. And I said that the disparity is because of taxes.
He would just pay me a flat fee of £15 an hour.
We got to the point where we had these guys falling in love with my models, serious, big time in love, right? Sending crazy money. And they were convinced they were going to meet the chick. This is almost where I kind of felt bad. Because they're like, can we meet? I've sent you $200,000.
But when you look at the money that I was actually bringing in, it just doesn't even scratch the surface.
I had these guys selling their houses, life savings, loans, all of it to me. Give me it all.
I was all about trying to get paid. Like I used sex as a tool to make women love me so they'd obey me and live in my house to make me money. That's what I wanted. So I was a pimp in that sense.
Were there any other instances where there was physical abuse?
I saw him smack girls with a belt.
So I want to pause right here because you see the mentality that he has. His mentality is that, he's not at all morally culpable for his actions.
Well, I mean, it's very, I guess, sociopathic. He doesn't care that like all these simps are basically blowing their life savings, which.
And we're going to talk about Tristan Tate weighing in on that in a second. So we're going to talk more about that morality in a second with the section on Tristan Tate that I have.
And I think some numbers I did come across, I think he was making like $600,000 a month on this business. So he got, I mean, again, he got.
I heard
rich.
400,000 when at its height.
Yeah, but I mean,
that's how he had those Bugattis and all that other stuff. Well, and he basically passed it off as, you can do this too. It's like, no, we're not all just going to make money on pornography, or not everyone's even capable of doing that. And he sort of did it during a time when, is transitioning from magazines and movies in the back corner to HD video interactive webcam stuff and OnlyFans. So he kind of did it during a more transitional period, technologically speaking.
And the other thing is, he would actually, I think one thing I came across was he would actually be the guy typing on the keyboard, because I guess the way it is, since it is interactive and it's like tokens and stuff, simps pay for tokens. They exchange real money for tokens. The tokens,
imaginary money.
Yeah, the tokens they pay to the women. If they might mention tokens in the video, but those tokens then have a
Tristan
dollar
Tate mentions like pretend imaginary ice cream cones or something like that.
But he would be like in the room. He might be like early on. He might be in the room with the women, and he'll be the one typing on the keyboard, and the women will have like a pretend keyboard, which they might like pretend to type, and that's how they did it. He made it's like him and Tristan made their girlfriends pretty much models, and that was the origin of this business.
Yeah, and it's like it's a facade about, obviously he's very public about how he became rich, but he sells the idea of you can do the same exact thing he did. But that's not really how making money and entrepreneurism works, if you want to call this entrepreneurism. Because timing matters, and first mover advantage, so to speak, matters. And the other thing is, he's very public about flaunting his money. There is a Bible verse about, I think there's a Bible verse about money made quickly, falls away quickly and is, dries up quickly, but money earned over time steadily is what, lasts. I believe that's in the book of Proverbs. So it's sort of a biblical principle that you see. And then obviously there's just no remorse about it. He's very much preying on people who are simps. They are committing degeneracy themselves, but their mentality is, I don't do that. My friends wouldn't do that. My sons wouldn't do that, but you're doing it and we're going to make money off of that. So that mentality is also very much wrong.
I mean, there's also maybe a little bit of a joy there. I got this guy selling his whole life savings for this. Like, you're kind of like, he's getting gratification from how invested the simps are becoming in his business.
Yeah. So it's a sad situation, but it does get a little worse from here.
Run out my ideas. That's right, lock the door, you knew I was going to beat the out of you. If you behaved, I wouldn't have to hit you, would I? You don't. Get out. You can't stay in there forever.
Once again, this is an IQ test, right? Because any guy who's bad with women would look at it and go, Tate's a woman beater.
I say it. Look at the camera. This is what happens, you don't listen. Look at the camera. Why are you getting hit? Why are you getting beaten? You don't listen. You. Do as I say.
Any man who's actually a G, who's been around a little bit, would look at the video and go, man, she wants that.
The media machine, they'd call up ex-girlfriends and say, if you have anything bad to say about Andrew, we can pay you $50,000 for the story. And they tried very hard. They didn't find any evidence of anything.
And I had gone to the shower, I came back and I noticed he was, I saw him raping her. And
People say, why did you in Romania? And I explain my 5 reasons. One of them is the Me Too era. They go, oh, well, you're a rapist. I say, no, I'm not a fucking rapist. But I like the idea of being able to just say, to do what I want. I like being free.
And of course, they don't go out. They're not allowed out. You stay in the house.
Because I'm not particularly.
So I want to pause right here. They do have Jordan Peterson clips in this, which I think is interesting because I guess he has to kind of weigh in on this. Catch this comment right here. Same Reza says again, the manosphere in general is just further the cause of feminism by fighting to remove all social responsibilities men have to society, thus completing feminism. I'm not entirely sure I agree with it. I think it's a counterfeit solution to feminism.
I mean,
that's kind of my take. I don't think it fulfills feminism. I think it's the counterfeit solution to it.
I mean, I might just say it's basically rather than elevating men and masculinity, it's more about, I guess, just pursue self. So I would say it is, I guess, somewhat, about the me in like that feminism has, but I would probably more emphasize that it's about, okay, we can't change the system, so here's how you play the system. Here's the rules have changed, so here's how you can win. And I think that's more what the manosphere is about. They're not about elevating the standard. They're just about, okay, the environment's bad, so we're just going to play to the environment.
So that clip right there had to do with Andrew Tate. You're sort of seeing a violent side of him. There exists a violent side, violent towards women.
Well, it's the pimp side. It's the pimp side. It's not
Andrew Tate, which I think does factor into. He was talking about, oh, these women are offered 50 grand to say bad things about me, is like how he's framing it. But at the same time, Andrew Tate has a lot more than 50 grand to not only pay silence, but there's also a violent history there that does seem to indicate that if you were to go out of line, if you were to speak out, there could be reprisals because this guy operates in the streets. Many of these women whom he recruits also operate on the street level. They operate like Stringer Bells and not what's the dude's name in The Wire?
Barksdale?
The senator. Clay Davis?
I think so.
Yeah, they operate in that world, and Clay Davis operates in the higher world, whereas, Stringer Bell operates in thug world, and he can't really cross that gap. So there's a mentality shift there, or lack of, the transcendent mentality doesn't exist.
No, I mean, there's a saying in I want to say the first episode of Boardwalk Empire, you can't be half a gangster. And Tate is full on gangster. You can't
he called himself a G in that clip.
Yeah.
So he's a full on G.
What would you say, impressed by what he's done on the sex business front? It seems to me a bit on the pimpy side, let's say.
I get called a pimp a lot, but and the reason I use the term is because I don't see it as a negative term. I see it as positively inspirational and motivating person.
She has to respect you and love you and want to work with you. And that's done through positively inspirational and motivating person.
I'm going to send you a book. It's a guy called Pimpin' Ken, who was a street pimp in the 90s, and he wrote a book, 50 Laws of the Game. And one of the laws of the game is a hoe without instruction is headed for destruction.
They're accusing me of using the Loverboy method, coercing them by being nice.
Let me read you then what you have said about what you have done.
Sure.
You have said, my job was to meet a girl, go on a few dates, sleep with her, get her to fall in love with me to the point where she'd do anything I say, and then get her on webcam so we could become rich together.
I don't think that's what I personally said. I think
that's exactly what you said on your website.
No, I've never said that.
So yeah, on corporatate.com I have my PhD program.
I think the belief is that you were charged with human trafficking.
Yeah, that's human trafficking, because what you do is you force a girl to work against her will for financial gain. That's human trafficking. And their justification for this is that girls do TikTok. Some girls I know who they found who say they're not victims have TikTok accounts.
PhD is a pimp and hose degree that I'm
Clever.
And that,
Scarlett Russell case has caught the attention.
Okay, so that is the.
What are you charging?
That is the Milk Bar TV clip. I do want to give them credit once again, because that's a good compilation, I would say. And it's like Andrew Tate's like, that's not what I said. And it's like literally showing the web archive of his website, cobratate.com. Was it a .com? I don't know. But don't go there because I believe that sounds like a pornographic website. So definitely do not go there. But Cobra Tate is literally his scream name on like most things, although there is sort of an archive Twitter account that has been making the rounds, was his old Twitter account, which has a different name to it than what he goes by now. It starts with a W or something. But the admissions of being a pimp, which he calls a positively inspirational, motivating person, right? Did I catch that? Or pimp.
See, I mean, you know, it's all fun and games when you have an acronym attached to it.
And you have a funny accent as well. So, you know, he talks with the funny accent, then he has the pimp acronym, and then that kind of makes it interesting. And how he defines human trafficking, well, he does kind of seem guilty of the definition in that clip where he defined human trafficking. It seems like he actually is guilty of that.
Yeah, I mean, it's like yes and no. I mean, again, I'm not necessarily sympathetic to women that, you know, whore around. I mean, again, he's not recruiting like, you know, the sweet girl. He's recruiting probably thirst traps using Instagram, because I think he talks about how he uses Instagram messaging to recruit the women. So you're probably recruiting them because they're laying thirst traps. And so, I mean, this is, you know, promiscuity. And then all you're doing is just convincing them to go from, I guess, harlots that give it away for free to those that do it for money. That's basically the transition you're making.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely see that. But at the same time, you know, I kind of not super concerned with how valid the charges are. I just kind of don't really care at this point. I feel like I'm at the point where, hey, he's violated God's law, so if you can get him on a technicality, thumbs up.
Oh no,
go
I'm
ahead.
not losing an hour or a minute of sleep over this. I got plenty of other problems with my life. His problems are not my problems. You know, that kind of mentality.
Oh, again, he doesn't care about anyone else. He's in it for his bag. He's in it for his money and his clout. So the fact that so many people think, oh, they're going after him, and they equate that to the system's going after him because he's such a threat to the system. He's not a threat to the system at all. He made his money and brags about making his money through degeneracy. What he is showing that degeneracy leads to wealth and long-term wealth, except if he goes to jail for, you know, in Romania, then his long-term wealth is eradicated. So I want to highlight this tweet by Michael Knowles. Let me actually zoom in here. Libs. It's good that Romania arrested Tate, Andrew Tate. He coerced women into porn. Libertarians. It's bad Romania arrested Andrew Tate. The women consented to porn. Conservatives. It's good Romania arrested Andrew Tate. He's a pornographer. So the ultimate message here being porn should be illegal. And we should be glad and celebratory, in fact, of Andrew Tate getting arrested.
Yeah, I mean, if your argument, especially, I don't know if Knowles is on the same page as Walsh when it comes to pornography should be illegal, but you know, if pornography should be illegal,
that is a growing movement on the right. You're starting to see a lot more on the right embrace that, and then getting some pushback. Guys from Same Riza, guys, the Romanian government are totally a bunch of woke lib cucks, you guys, I swear. And I don't necessarily disagree with that. I don't think you might be right about that.
Again, I have no sympathy for the women because they consented to it.
Yeah, I agree. I'm not sure
they were insane.
Coercion. he's a pimp. That is true. Did they get themselves into the pimping? Sure. But if they get, okay, you were being that comment was sarcastic. My apologies. Because that is one of the,
well, that was his claim. That was his claim, though, because I guess he said that NATO has an outsized presence in Romania. So,
I mean, yeah, I do believe that Romania is, in fact, a NATO country for some odd reason.
I mean, if you look at what country that country borders,
Ukraine and Moldova and Hungary. Now, what's interesting is like you'd expect them to set up shop in like Ukraine or Czech Republic. Those are like the sluttiest countries in Europe. Am I wrong about that?
I wouldn't know. Never been to Europe.
Well, I saw a list of like the most popular websites in the world. And obviously, if you're doing the most popular websites in the world, there's going to be some, shady material on that list.
What I can tell you.
And the shady material, the websites were Czech.
What I can tell you is that
because it had a flag of the country next to them of like who owned it. And it's like,
I can tell you that
Czechs.
OnlyFans had a Ukrainian billionaire invest in it. And that's, so there might be a connection there that a Ukrainian invested in OnlyFans and turned it more into a adult content site versus what it was before.
Well, I think Patreon used to be sort of an adult content site, but then they cracked down.
They went legitimate.
Yeah, they went legitimate. So I do think that was their story, because when the OnlyFans Simpocalypse happened, this was about last year, I think. This was like they're like, oh, now they're doing what Patreon did. It was kind of like the hoe mentality that you were seeing on the internet at the time. But yeah, same Riz, who was being sarcastic in the last comment, said Romania has a weak government, which is why human traffickers like to congregate there. And one of the pushbacks is that, hey, they're woke, and I don't think Romania is in the European Union. Is that correct?
Yeah, I don't know. They're on the edges, so I'm not. I would have thought they were, but
no, you'd be surprised. Like Serbia, I don't think is in the EU. Hungary is, but they're like the bad boys in the EU and NATO for that matter, because they don't want to.
Against
they hate. Hungary is anti-Ukraine.
They're also pro-population, which is
it's weird because Hungary. This is where Christian nationalism is really based, because Hungary, by the statistics, is not a model Christian country. Like their birth rates aren't great. Their religious rates aren't really all that great either. But they have an outsized Christian influence in culture and government. And then guess who was going after Hungary's Viktor Orban? Michael O'Fallon. Go figure, because he wants to paint Orban as a China puppet. But if I were Hungary, like, I'm not going to blame a nation for hedging their bets with China when America's in such steep decline.
No, especially when
I'm not going to blame a nation for doing that.
Especially since every nation in Europe is already doing that. I mean, France and China both, or France and Italy were both.
Well, Michael O'Fallon, goes after Christians, so that's why he's pointing out Viktor Orban instead of
France was
Emmanuel Macron.
France was involved in
Wuhan,
and Italy had direct flights going to Wuhan, so it's like they're all invested.
So, and then Michael Knowles tweeted out this image, a map of Europe with Romania having a Giga Chad head on it. I like the image, so it's why I bookmark it for the highlight. I do have some other tweets to show. So let's talk about the Tristan Tate tweet. This one's a little racy, but we're going to cover it anyway. He says, Tristan Tate, who's Andrew Tate's brother, in case that was not obvious or previously known. Andrew Costas says, all this talk of countries makes me want to say Uganda forever. And then another comment, Hungary's birth rates have been climbing since Orban's administration started, to 30% higher than where they were in 2014. And I guess that's the thing, is like how low they were, like where Hungary was versus where they're on trajectory to being. but it's like that is an outsized Christian influence in that country.
Yes, and again,
they are kicking way beyond their coverage. They are punching way above their weight class in that country, and you love to see
and
that.
again, just on the Hungary thing, because I wrote an article about way back on Orban's policies, and again, if you want to change, or you can't just implement natalism policies, like because Hungary has no taxes for women that have like 4 children. You can't just do that. You actually have to change the underlying culture. Then you have to add the incentive. So you actually have to make people want to procreate. I mean, China has reduced their one-child policy, and yes, their birth rates have gone up a little bit, but it's still pretty pitiful.
Well, because they have coffin-sized apartments, and a lot in a growing middle class that's more career focused. So these things are going to happen. So Tristan Tate's tweets out, and this is last week, or this is July 16th, so earlier this week. I'm a free market capitalist. And I absolutely hated this tweet, which is why we're talking about it. He says, I am a free market capitalist. With this in mind, I will state that these women do nothing wrong. The people buying them imaginary ice cream are retarded. So? Question mark. My friends and my sons won't be watching them, but somebody is. The customers are the problem with society, not them.
I mean,
and I got major issues with that mentality.
This is how drug dealers justify their actions. You're no different than a heroin. You're no different than a heroin dealer.
And it's like, if there were no heroin dealers, would there be any heroin addicts?
No.
If there are 0 heroin dealers, are there heroin addicts?
All the pharma bros selling their pills.
Those are heroin dealers.
Well, licensed or unlicensed.
Wait, but if there are no prostitutes, are there Johns? So that's where I see the moral culpability, is that the supplier of vice is the one more morally responsible for the partaking of vice, because they create the temptation. The prostitute on the street corner is creating the temptation that might otherwise not exist. The sinful desire to fornicate might exist, but the temptation might not, first of all, they're the temptation. The temptation is an external phenomenon, not an internal one. So when someone sees that temptation, that's when they might succumb to weakness when they otherwise might not. The person who is supplying the vice is supplying the temptation, I think has the greater moral culpability. Not to say that the other person buying the vice, the person buying drugs has moral culpability in that decision. The person buying heroin has moral culpability. But I don't think they have as much as the dealer, the person profiting from it, the person supplying the temptation, creating the temptation where otherwise none would exist. So those are my thoughts on that. I think that's fairly standard biblical worldview stuff.
But it's also, it's the same thing with, you can relate this entire thing to the sexual revolution, where because women decided to sleep around a lot more, now everyone's sleeping around a lot more. And one of the things I came across in the research is basically, if you go back 100 years ago to people that were born in the 1910s, the idea that being a virgin on your wedding day was like, 50% for guys, 70% for women. Nowadays, so that means anything higher than a 0 is considered a high body count, as the kids would say. And nowadays, 4 for a woman, 4 is considered low. Or
you say high body count, but I'm pretty sure body count was a thing when we were in high school.
Fair enough.
That was the term used then.
But
so
try to sound hip.
Yeah, you're trying to sound hip, but it's like that term's like 10 years old at least.
The idea is, if you go back to people born 100 years ago, anything higher than a 0 was considered high, and you were like, and now it's 4 is considered low. So that's a drastic change in just 100 years.
Andrew Costa has an interesting comment. I actually run into Muslims that in real life that argue, I hate to do it, but I'll supply it attitude. So I think, yeah, that's fairly.
And I think
then
that's why Tate is a Muslim and not a Christian. Because I mean, I think I looked on his his
because he doesn't have to repent if he's a
Exa-
Muslim. If he's a Muslim, he just has to put his faith in the Muslim God, who doesn't necessarily require repentance, but is a very capricious God, and you are saved if Allah wills it.
I mean,
that's basically how salvation in Islam works.
Yeah, I mean, and again, I think before he was donating to like the Russian or Romanian Orthodox Church, so I guess that was him. Like, I don't know if it's just atoning. I mean, giving your.
I thought Tristan Tate views himself as Orthodox.
I think they both did, but Andrew Tate went from Orthodox to Orthodox, like apostate Orthodox to.
Yeah, I don't want to unfairly characterize Eastern Orthodox based on the
Yeah, I mean, he was basically just paying.
But this is something that I see is that Eastern Orthodox tend to have a very friendly relationship with Islam. Like the Ortho Bros on Twitter seem very friendly towards Islam. I think that's a very weird miscalculation. So then there's this one tweet, this other tweet that was from July 17th. The world knows I used to run a webcam website. I spoke about it in depth. Very popular business here in Romania with hundreds of studios in the capital alone. But I'll repeat this again. There is zero connection between these legal business activities and my current case. The current case alleges I formed a gang in 2021 to steal money from my friend's TikTok creator funds. So if that's what he said, you got to believe him, right? Believe all men. So those are the tweets that I wanted to highlight on this. And again, this might be an Al Capone situation in that they're going to find them guilty on a technicality, but everyone's going to be thankful for it. The broader society is going to be thankful for it because you're getting some scumbags off the street. So that's kind of my thought on this, because he should go to jail for being a pornographer. He should go to jail for that. So if they can get him on a technicality, then so be it. Those are my thoughts.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things I wrote in the article is, Tate has somewhat of a positive message on masculinity, and you see that a lot in like the Tucker Carlson interview. Because honestly, I've never listened.
He's gonna put his best foot forward.
Yeah, but until then I'd never really watched Andrew Tate in any sort of long form, and that was 2.5 hours of. So I got a good taste.
Say, I didn't know who Andrew Tate was before last year. Apparently, he was the most Googled person last year in 2022 because everyone didn't know who he was, and now people are looking him up.
Yeah, but pretty much no amount of positive message on masculinity can erase the fact that you're the world's most notorious pimp. And you can't. You're peddling masculinity when at the same time previously you were selling.
Well, it's like how did you get to where you are at? Did you earn it through hard work? No, you earned it through sordid gain. And he's trying to, and that's not a role model. That's just never going to be a role model. And I think that's why you're seeing elevated pushback. I think the pushback came pretty late, to be honest, but better late than never, I suppose. Same Riza commenting a lot tonight. Keep the comments coming. We'll interact. A lot of people on the far right like Islam now because they're anti-homosexuality and transgenderism, which is sort of true.
Yeah, I mean, if they suspect you of being...
Historically speaking, Christian nations made Islam or homosexuality illegal before Islam did.
I mean,
and I believe the Ottomans or the Turks, one of them legalized it before any Christian nation did.
Well, I mean, it's I mean, they operate more on prison rules though, so just bear that in mind. I mean,
Spartan prison rules.
I don't if you watched the Ami Horowitz video for PragerU of why you should support Israel because they're so pro-gay. One of the things he has in the video is like a homosexual basically talking about how he was violated by people that didn't like homosexuals. And I'll let you guys fill in the blanks on what I'm talking about, but that's how they operate in the Middle East. They will do certain things to people they suspect of being gay. So it's more of a prison rule situation.
This and then Robert points out this world's masculinity is far different than biblical masculinity. And again, that's kind of what highlights the Tates in general. They are the counterfeit to a biblical masculinity. Because I think there's a couple things that are encompassed in biblical masculinity. One is labor. You see that in Genesis 2. Adam has a job in the garden. He is to work in the garden. He's not supposed to do nothing. And then Eve was created to help him. So labor is one, accountability is another, because God goes to Adam first. And we learn this in the creation account. So labor and accountability. And Andrew Tate has neither of those. He got his money through sordid gains, not labor. Masturbating on camera is not work. Getting girls to do that is not work. It's not labor. It's sordid gain. And there's no real sense of accountability to that. He doesn't care that people ruin their own lives because of what he did. He's just happy to have the money. And he brags about it.
I mean, I might say that the world has a void of masculinity. I mean, this has commonly been called the gynocracy, but the idea is that there's a void and something is going to fill that void if nothing does.
So, some food for thought, I suppose. With that said, I think we should transition to some of the people that you wanted to talk about as well. I think we've covered the Tates pretty thoroughly. So you mentioned Rollo and then Pearly Things. I actually do have a tweet by Pearly Things. Let me find that real quickly.
Yeah, so I mean, I don't know.
Yeah, here we go. So here's Pearly Things. Do you know the majority of HVM, which is their acronym? You'll see this acronym thrown around a lot in the Manosphere. It stands for high value men cheat. So do you know the majority of high value men cheat? Yes. Do you know women? Do women know the majority of high value men cheat? Yes. Is it useful for women going after those men to expect monogamy? But Pearl, you're giving them a pass. No, I'm not. I am just not blind. And that's Pearl Davis from a couple days ago, the 17th. So her mentality is that if you're a high value man, you're going to cheat.
Yeah. And that's, I mean, one of the things I actually put about, I write about that was the high value man are expected to cheat. I mean, and keep in mind, she's taking other people's stuff. I mean, Kevin Samuels said that the high value man has like the privilege to cheat, not because they should cheat, but because they have that option, which again is logically true. I mean, if you're rich, if you're handsome, if you're successful, you're going to have women throwing themselves
if you're
at
criminal,
you. And that's
you're criminal and you don't pay child support.
Like,
yeah, those guys have women throwing themselves out at you as absurd.
So I mean,
but we've talked a lot about crime tonight. We've made a reference to The Wire and Boardwalk Empire. Well, this is The Sopranos, where she's talking about women who get into relationships with high value men should expect to have that man would have a gumar.
I mean,
that is what she's saying.
I mean, she's basically saying high value man, high value problems, which actually she has said those exact words. But I mean, there's a sense that, yeah, are they going to have more temptation? Yes. But if they truly are high value, then they wouldn't cheat. Like, I mean,
and that's exactly the logical way to think about it. High value men, high value husband material doesn't cheat. And there's another tweet by Pearl Davis that I'll pull up. I saw it earlier today, and it's just one of the most absurd, unbiblical things that I've heard. So this is another tweet by Pearl Davis that's very much anti-biblical, by the way. She tweets, "Wives are not called to love their husbands. They're called to respect them." And that's just simply not true. I mean, it's true in one verse that wives are called to respect their husbands, but the idea that wives aren't called to love their husbands, that's simply not true. Sovereign Bra, who I've had a lot of positive things to say about Sovereign Bra, has said and cited Titus 2:4-5, "And so train the young women to love their husbands and children, to be self-controlled, pure, working at home, kind, and submissive to their own husbands, that the word of God may not be reviled." So that's from the ESV of Titus 4-5.
I mean,
and that's complete. And to this ratio, yes, he did indeed ratio Pearly Things for that absurd tweet.
It is very much a horrible misapplication of Ephesians 5, because I understand the whole love versus respect dynamic. I mean, Emerson Eggerick was big in selling Love and Respect, his own book, which is like,
I can't remember whether I finished that book.
Okay, so you're familiar with the book, but it's basically your 90s.
Yeah, anyone who's been married in the church is probably familiar with that.
So the idea is that the women are supposed to respect their husbands, the men are supposed to love them unconditionally. So based on Ephesians 5:20 through 28, I don't know what the end all verses are, but that's basically the dynamic.
And that's what Pearly Things is trying to say, but she doesn't know that she's going to get wrecked because she hasn't read all of Scripture, because she's a bad Catholic.
But it doesn't. Yeah, it's like you're only supposed to respect him. You don't have to love him. You just have to respect him.
And she's the bad kind of bad Catholic. There's the bad Catholic that's actually probably saved, and then there's the bad Catholic that attends Mass like once a month and doesn't know anything about Christianity. That's Pearly Things.
But I mean, again, she's not going to say that, hey, look, a high value woman, she's expected, she is entitled to cheat, right? Of course, she would never say that. She'd never say Kate Upton has the right to cheat, or Margot Robbie has the right to cheat because, she's apparently mid now.
That was one of the most absurd internet arguments.
But yeah, she would never.
And we talked about that last week.
She would never say that these like high value, desirable, and sexually attractive women have the right to cheat. She would never argue that.
I mean, you don't cheat on Justin Verlander, who did very well pitching yesterday, by the way. It is sad that these Manosphere types get an audience. They say very true things confidently, and then get a pass to say a bunch of crap. And yeah, I think that's true. But you got to realize that women love confidence.
Well, keep in mind,
like that's one of the things that's how he's able to do this lover boy method, is through confidence.
Keep in mind,
sheer confidence.
A lot of these people will do the respect and love card. It's just like, yeah, I wonder where they got that from. Oh, it's in the Bible. Wow, who would have thought? They're just repackaging nuggets from Scripture and then passing them off as their own. And that's pretty much a lot of where the good in the Manosphere is, that if you just read your Bible, you would get anything useful out of it. Like, you don't need to read any of their books. Just read the only book that matters.
So you got an article that's written. You want me to pull it up, or can you pull it up?
You can go ahead and do that. You got a bigger setup.
All right. Give me a second. So go ahead and let the audience know what it's about, what it's titled.
So basically it's right now it's Red Pill versus Christ Pill, evaluating the harm of Rollo Tomasi and Pearly Things.
And we kind of just articulated some of the harm of Pearly Things, and that's just from this past week. Like, she did the interview with Jason Whitlock, I believe last week or 2 weeks ago,
she came off as,
where she sounded just like a grifter. She's just chasing She wants to be popular and successful in media.
Yeah, she wants.
Like, that's literally, it's very shallow. She is a kiddie pool of depth in that interview. And they even kind of reflected on it, on her shallowness the next day. Like, there's nothing more to it. And I was kind of stunned that it's like, she just wants to be popular and successful in media. That like, is that really all there is to her? And the answer is yes.
Yeah.
But
and one of the things I open up with is just that this is a growing problem. And that's why part of the reason why I wanted to confront this is, think of it this way: 63% of men 18 to 30 are single, compared to 34% of women. So you have a difference of 29%. And in 2019, it was 51% of men 18 to 30 were single. So you had a 12% increase from pre-COVID to 2022. So
Pearly Things has 1.56 million subs. You have Rollo Tomasi, the Rational Male, has 214,000 subs.
And he wrote up.
Fresh and Fit has 1.45 million subs. And Kevin Samuels, who's deceased,
yes,
right?
1 year or
1.75 million subs on YouTube.
So the movement, or the idea is, this market is growing for the Manosphere. And again, I kind of insert the other adjacent movements. So some of their customers might be the incels, the involuntary celibates, as they're called. Basically, guys that can't get laid even if they want it, or if they want it to. Then you have MGTOW, which stands for Men Going Their Own Way. Basically, those people are probably going to be on the older side, so they might be like a divorced dad. That would be a MGTOW. And the third was,
okay, that's a new acronym for
yeah.
me. I've seen it, but I didn't know what it meant.
Yeah, that's why.
And what's a Sigma male?
I guess it's, I don't know, alpha.
Does that mean like psychotic or?
I don't know. I just, that one
sociopathic or something, or that one I'm not.
I only used it.
I see it a lot. I know I've seen it defined, but I forget what it means.
I only used it once in the article as more of a little snark. And then the third one would be the passport bros, which are the guys that go to foreign countries to date international women or foreign women in those countries. So basically, your US dollar goes farther overseas, kind of thing. You turn into a high value.
You turn into a high value man. Yeah, exactly.
So
just want to remind everyone to smash the like button. That helps with the YouTube algorithms. But anyway, this article is not published currently. It will be published tomorrow morning. So 7:21, 7 o'clock, and it'll be in the newsletter. So sign up for the newsletter so you can read it. So you say that this is a growing problem.
I mean, you have a 12% increase pre-COVID to post-COVID
in
single men under 30.
Single men under 30, 12% increase. And COVID, major facilitator of that, or lockdowns, really, not COVID, but the lockdowns. We shouldn't give credit to COVID, where the lockdowns were really the culprit. This is an era when the average first marriage of a man is 30.4 years and 28.6 years for women, both of which are all-time highs for Americans and trending upwards. Yet the problem is not merely the age of marriage, but the formation of relationships that eventually lead to marriage. 63% of men 18 to 30 are single, compared to 34% of women, a difference of 29%. It sounds like these women are dating above that age range.
I mean, that would be implied if it's 30.4 and 28.
Although you also see these mid-20s teachers going after high school boys. You also see you're seeing a huge uptick in that. So you talk about the 12% increase, though it is natural for men in their 30s and thus outside the cohort to seek women younger and thus within the cohort. Does that really account for the 29% difference? Even if it did, the 30 to 40-year-old men pursuing women under 30 reflects this negative social trend of later marriages. The advent of dating apps, rather than reverse trends in marital decline, has created a hookup culture and prolonged adolescence instead of marriage. The failure to form families directly correlates with the population collapse. Globally, mankind is struggling to repopulate above replacement, with global fertility being 2.3 as of 2021, according to the World Bank. In America, fertility stands at 1.64, meaning that America is below population replacement. But the trend is especially profound in East Asian nations that have the lowest birth rates in the world. So you're talking like
So
Japan.
just for those that are struggling with math, 2, since you have a father and a mother, 2 is even population replacement, or even fertility is 2. 2 people create 2 people. So just so you know. So if you're at 1.64, that means for every 2 people, for father and mother, you're only producing like 1.6 children. So you're below replacement. You're losing population in the long run. So globally, it's at 2.3, which is barely above replacement.
And it's very interesting because you should see in the 20th century, we saw nations experience a 5x growth in the 20th century. That is biblical. And I mean that in proportionate of numbers. So, in the book of Exodus, or is it Genesis? When the Hebrews are in Egypt, there's like 72 of them. And in 400 years, there's like hundreds of thousands of them, which is mathematically possible if like every 50 years, the population grows 5x. Like you're going to get a substantial number with 5x growth in every 50 years in 400 years. So the math work checks out in Genesis and Exodus, just so we're clear. But that we saw that globally, where like these nations, these developing countries had massive population growths in the 20th century. And then all of a sudden, now that we've developed and now all these countries have birth control and abortion and all this other stuff, the population rate is plummeting.
So one thing
fertility rate is plummeting.
Which is why I mentioned that East Asia is the worst, like Japan, Singapore, I think, is one of the lowest in the world. Taiwan is lower than China. South Korea is low. So a lot of those Asian countries are very low on their birth rates. And I don't quite know the explanation to that. I mean, communism might be one. I mean, maybe it's just they're very secular cultures, so they're very secular and materialistic. I don't quite know why the Asian countries are very low on fertility, despite being more traditional in culture or certain elements of culture.
Well, Japan has a very older population. I think that's one
Well, that's
reason.
because they didn't reproduce.
Because they have tiny apartments.
Yeah, you'd have a younger population.
Tiny cars, tiny apartments, big cities though. Tokyo is huge. They don't have a homeless population. Like they don't really have a homeless population that you see in the United States. Interestingly enough. But yeah, we're doing a lot of comparative nation talk here. So you have a section on black-pilled black-pilled on marriage.
So yeah,
as the institution,
they call themselves red-pilled, but I mean, really, when it comes to marriage, they are more or less black-pilled.
And that seems to be the point you're trying to drive here. As the institution of marriage has been eroded since the 1960s, there is a growing disillusionment to the prospects of marriage, particularly among men who believe it to be a raw deal in which the legal deck is stacked against them. Marriage is likened to jumping out of a functional airplane with a parachute with less than 50% success rate. The red pill community is familiar with the statistic in which 70% of divorces are initiated by women, 90% if the woman is college educated, and that the woman becomes the custodial parent 90% of the time, albeit mostly through settlement, which is unmentioned by the red pill. So you're saying that during a divorce,
child custody,
a lot of times men won't contest.
Yeah, or it just is settled. So it doesn't go to a court. It's
I
settled
mean,
out of court.
if you're, let's use Steven Crowder as an example. Like, I highly doubt that Steven Crowder is going to get custody over his kids because they're under 3 years old.
Yeah.
And I have a hard time believing that Steven Crowder is going to be able to handle that. So he can, I think he's fighting for full custody just because he wants to go down and do battle. But there's a lot of situations like that where men shouldn't expect the full custody in that
Yeah, I
type of
mean,
situation.
generally, when you file a contested divorce, you're probably fighting for everything.
You're going to fight for everything, so you at least get some of the stuff that's more realistic. But there is a point in which, hey, these divorce courts really do shaft the dudes. Like that's true, but we got to realize that, hey, it's more natural for women to live with mothers to nurture and then men to provide. That's just more of a natural dynamic. But and I think women kind of realize that they can live with that and then get the child support on top of that, which again doesn't help the situation at all. There's a reason why God hates divorce. So you have this chart here, the chances of divorce after 5 years of marriage. So, and you have a body count indicator.
Well, I mean, if you go up above that a little bit, I say that the red pill ignore the factors which significantly decrease divorce and also significantly increase marital satisfaction. So basically, I say that having fewer sexual partners leads to increased or superior marital outcomes. And basically, this is a study. Institute of Family Studies had this one, and they also provide a couple other statistics I used in this, including the marriage
what it's
age.
showing here is, and this is an older study, although it's 2002 to 2013, so you got like a 11-year span here. But the people who are virgins on their wedding have a sub 5% birth or divorce rate, and that's the most recent line on this line chart. Whereas like 2 previous partners is like the highest until you get to 10 plus.
Yeah, so I mean, it does show that. I mean, again, it's 5%. It jumps to 20 with just one. So I mean, these chances of divorce.
So that's about 30%,
increase.
by the way. The 2 partners is at 30%, and then after 10 partners, it gets up close to 35%. That's the most recent data. I imagine that might be a little bit higher.
I mean, that chart was essentially used as like the intro for the main study, which is the study by the Wheatley Institute, which, I mean, yes, is BYU, but, you know.
The Mormons. So you say a study by the Wheatley Institute released in 2023 found a favorable correlation between relationship satisfaction, sexual satisfaction, and emotional connection with marital couples with only one sexual partner, their spouse, than couples who had multiple sexual partners. Contrary to the world's perception, sexual inexperience leads to better marital outcomes. It's almost as if the biblical model for marriage works.
Because keep in mind, the worldly argument is that you need to sleep around, learn what you like, learn what you don't like, and then settle down later. So that's the worldly model. That's the world's message, is that you need to engage in hookup culture. You need to sow your wild oats, and then you can settle down.
Okay, and then this is where you talk about Rollo Tomasi debating Ruslan on valuetainment.
Yes.
Which
so
they tried to offer Tucker Carlson like 9 figures and ownership to join their network. I don't think he's accepted the deal. But
yeah, I mean, they are big.
They're huge, and I've never heard of them until that Tucker story happened. In truth, many detractors of Ruslan's apologetics for abstinence preceding marriage simply do not want to change their habit of premarital sex or otherwise curb their sinful desires. It is not supposed to be easy, especially in modern society, but it does yield the best statistical outcome. Rollo and Ruslan speak about the lost boys generation, but ultimately, family gives purpose to the lives of men. as both fathers and husbands. Have you seen that meme going around of like there's a New York Times article that says like pickleball is how we cure male loneliness?
No, I haven't seen that.
And it's just been completely roasted with more biblically based alternatives, like retaking Constantinople's the cure to male loneliness, or sailing the sea with the boys is the cure to male loneliness, because the original article is pickleball, but it's like, so it's just getting memed with very, return to tradition sort of tropes.
And keep in mind, someone like Rollo Tomasi, he's actually married and has been married for like 26 plus years.
Does he cheat?
No, monogamously married for 26 years. So, and he wants to basically sell, or I guess bash marriage as an institution, despite the fact that divorce was lower or was worse when he got married. Like divorce actually was probably around 50% or over 50% when he got married.
Yeah, it has gone down, but the biggest driver of the divorce rate increase, or the biggest driver of divorce rates, is already previously married. So repeat offenders.
Yeah.
And then people not getting married at all. That would actually drive the divorce rate down because they're not getting married. And then you have this body count, promiscuity, and gender as the next section. The state of modern women is daunting, even for a young Christian man, the young Christian man who is ideally abstaining from premarital sex and pornography. Statistically, unmarried women skew heavily liberal, and our society both promotes hookup culture and demeans chastity. The red-pilled are often turned off from the prospects of marriage when women are more promiscuous than prior generations. They will claim 80% of women are chasing after 20% of men, which is statistically supported through an OkCupid study.
Now, one thing I'll add is that...
Can you elaborate on that study?
So the study basically down to like the 80-20 rule when it comes to women on OkCupid, which isn't really one of the more popular ones. I did find a more recent study on Hinge,
because you're more about the Hinge and Upwork.
Hinge is probably the best as far as because it's one of the three biggest, and it's more relationship geared. So 50% of all likes sent to women go to 25% of women. So that's male behavior. A quarter of the women are getting half the swipes, and then 50% of the likes to men go to 15%. So 50% go to 15%. So the top 15% on Hinge are women. So it's probably very similar if you were to, extrapolate the data, but it is even similar on a different app, probably a more popular app.
However, it should be noted that men still retain higher averages for sexual partners, which is interesting because I was kind of surprised that might still be the case.
Well, it's weird because, you got to take into account that 25 to 49. So it's not, later on in the article, you'll see what the under 30 statistics are. But obviously, if you leave it on a long enough timeline, the men will probably overtake women in average sexual partners, but the women might get a little bit of a leg up in the beginning. But obviously one of the Manosphere talking points is that all women are sluts, but at the same time, men sleep around a lot more, and that's across all the age categories. But at the same time, it's still, I want to say 46% of women, have more than 4 partners. So, that's still a problem for society at large. We shouldn't ignore that. And that's driving the male number up. Kind of like the vice, the supplier of vice is driving the demand of vice. The promiscuous women are driving the promiscuous men.
The female median is still 28.6, or is in that 28.6. So 5 to 9 would be somewhere where the median is for women. The men, median, that math is a little harder because it might actually be in the 12 point, or it's somewhere in the 5 to 9 as well.
No, that's a percent of the. That's a percent. So it's
right, but that's
3 versus.
But I was doing the median.
That is the median.
Well, yeah, but in terms of actual body count, it'd be somewhere between that for both of them. And then contrary to the red pill's messaging that most women nowadays are massive, double-digit body counts, you're still pointing out that men are actually sleeping around more than women.
And that's why, and then I just pull up this chart just to reiterate the point that 4 partners.
And is it because there's a certain category of women that's just driving this number versus most do not drive this number, like, Australian women or something?
I mean, it might be more rural city. I mean, that might be the primary.
Okay, so small town girl.
Or you just have 20% of women that are just massive promiscuous.
But even the highly experienced is actually pretty even between men and women.
No, that's marital satisfaction.
Oh, that's marital. This is the marital satisfaction.
Yeah, which is half of what it would be with inexperience.
Okay, and then this chart is lifetime sexual partners by age. So this is
for married people. So married adults. So one thing that they found is that basically under 40 women have more sexual partners. Married women have more sexual partners. I mean, it's pretty much neck and neck for 30 and 39, but under
Wait, is this
30,
because that under 30 married women are more likely to cheat than married men?
Probably not. I mean,
I've heard that statistic, and then it flips.
I have that statistic in there, but I mean, basically, the study did not actually discuss the under 30 women having more sexual partners, because that's around 6.5, 6.25, as far as what that number is. But they don't discuss it in the report. And again, obviously, more women under 30 are going to be married than men, simply because that's where the average is. But still, that 6.25 as an average is very detrimental for society as a whole, because it would be suggestive that women are having more sex than men under 30.
So you say one of the surprising and underreported trends is that female promiscuity relative to male promiscuity for under 30, which we kind of talked about. The notion that women are living it up in their 20s is statistically supported. And it's a shame that the Wheatley Institute did not discuss this finding of married women in their report. Over time, it does appear that married men overtake women on body count, but the damage caused to society by the average being higher for women or married women under 30 compared to their male counterparts cannot go understated, as every statistic surrounding delayed marriage and divorce is resultant from this dangerous mindset. This average is already primed for negative statistical outcomes within marriage. So let me get this straight. What you're saying there is that because women are more promiscuous early on, that sets up the system to fail.
I mean,
and then men will eventually have a higher body count over the long run.
I mean, obviously, I would think if men stay single long enough, the average man would overtake the woman. But this phenomenon is more recent, so I don't think there's enough data out there as far as who is actually studying what U.S. adults under 30, what their behaviors are. So I don't think there's enough research out there that would show one way or the other. But I think that's a nugget of the research, is that the average sexual partners for a married woman is higher than that of a married man under 30. So I think that is a problem for society, and that would be evidence that this notion that women are living it up in their 20s is statistically supported, because using 25 to 49 is a much larger range, and you're getting multiple generations in there. So I think if you're looking more towards like that Gen Z and maybe late millennial, that's where you need to focus any research on. But and that's where you might find something, because that would be in line with the 61% of men are single versus the 34% of women.
And then he said an interesting study by Date Psychology found that only 12% of women prefer a man with no sexual experience, versus 27% of men who disproportionately lean younger and conservative. Because conservative men don't want, sexually experienced women to marry. Like, that's pretty unsurprising, actually.
Read the next sentence.
Studies like this exemplify the ideological divide between men and women, where women at large do not prefer chastity in men versus men who desire it more and desire it in women. There's a hypocrisy where women complain about the double standard, yet the desire men have double standard, yet desire men who have slept around. Meanwhile, the men who do not sleep around are disproportionately interested in virgins. So the 15% difference is not some Sigma male Andrew Tate archetype, but likely a Gen Z conservative. Undoubtedly, the disparity impacts the ability of young men to find virtuous women. And
So I
that
mean,
relates.
if you ever need your talking point of women complaining about the double standard when it comes to sex, just throw that at their face. That most women, and again, that study, I don't know
Okay.
how scientific
And
it was.
then same Riza says the Sigma male is a guy who all the ladies want to choose, but chooses not to because he's above all women. So he
so maybe
could have all the women, but doesn't because he ain't about that life, I guess. That's what it means. That now see, thank you for reminding me what the Sigma male is. It might be a self-delusionary state though.
So yeah, if you need the talking point, yeah, just say, yeah, but most women are seeking a man that has experience. So just throw that in their face if you ever have a woman in your life complaining about the double standard. They want the double standard.
The high value man.
Like
as the Manosphere calls it. And the Manosphere's solution is to be that man.
Pretty much in a nutshell.
To be that man that women want, and then you can treat women like crap. It kind of reminds me of that Seinfeld episode where Bob Odenkirk was playing was a character actor in the 90s. A lot of people from Breaking Bad were in Seinfeld, interestingly enough. And Bob Odenkirk was playing a doctor, or was it a dentist?
Doctor.
He was a doctor. He was trying to get his medical license, and he was dating Elaine, and Elaine was helping him get that. And I think she stopped having sex with him in order to get that, to help him study.
He turns into a genius because he's not having sex or thinking about sex.
That's kind of the joke.
The joke.
And then as soon as he becomes a doctor, he realizes that he doesn't have to date Elaine anymore. He can get way hotter women or whatever. And that's kind of the mentality of the Manosphere now. It's like you don't need the women that are good to you because you increase your value, and then you can get any woman that you want. But ultimately, it's not aspirational because you're not really building a legacy. You're just building a belt with a lot of notches on it. And of course, that's going to send you to hell. Tim Keller once famously said that homosexuality doesn't get you sent to hell, and heterosexuality doesn't get you sent to heaven, which is not biblical whatsoever, because you get sent to hell for the sins that you commit and are punished in hell according to the sins that you commit. That is what's taught in Scripture. So repent while you still can. That should be a component in the Manosphere, but it's not.
Yeah, one thing and this is why
it's not even a component in the Jordan Peterson Manosphere.
This is why I kind of combine evolution and hypergamy as like one, because again, they view humans as more or less just glorified animals going through their more complicated mating rituals, and that's kind of how they view it.
Yeah, one of the key distinctions between the Christ-pilled and the red-pilled is the latter's evolutionary framework, which inherently leads to a hedonistic attitude wherein the goal is to navigate the environment to maximize sexual pleasure. As an aside, the red pill's framework is not to be conflated with evolutionary psychology, as it is more epistemological rather than empirical. Through an evolutionary framework, this allows the red-pilled community to ultimately rationalize their low view of women, marriage, and family. Behaviors are treated through the lens of pseudo-evolutionary mating rituals rather than the Imago Dei or the fall of man. Marriage is treated as a declining social utility rather than a divine institution. man's sexual desires are to be satisfied rather than controlled or sedated through vice. So yeah, and then you
And
talk about
sedated through vice would, take us back to the beginning with the porno discussion.
So
and one
you-
thing Rollo Tomasi will actually do is he condemns porn and weed, and so he'll condemn a lot of that stuff. But
because
at the
he
same
says
time,
you should be doing it in real life.
pretty much.
So under these assumptions, women operate to maximize hypergamy. Can you define that?
Oh, next sentence.
It is the next sentence, but I want you to kind of flesh it out.
So it's basically upgrading your social status. So this is you marry the guy with more money, more ability to protect and provide. So you're trying to upgrade in life. And that's pretty much the gist of hypergamy. You're either dating at your level or above. So preferably above. So the assumption is that women seek hypergamy. But again, I kind of say that hypergamy is more or less innate. Like I would say that's an intrinsic quality in human nature. And
well, because we talked about this last week that women, it is reasonable, and moreover, one of the things that we kind of said was it was kind of biblical that women would want to seek a man who looks like he's capable of protecting and providing. Andrew Costa says, give us a warning before we're quoting J.D. Greer, but it's actually Tim Keller that said that first, I believe, not J.D. Greer.
Not Tosin Research.
Tim Keller doesn't use, I mean, this is Tim Keller in a media interview, I believe. He was trying to sound ultra smart, but, Tim Keller, like many people in Big Eva are midwits. Let's see. So with that said, you talk about so under these assumptions, women operate to maximize hypergamy. Hypergamy is a sign defined. Okay, so we already said that part. So regarding hypergamy, the red pill community asserts that women are generally looking to upgrade men or transfer from alphas to settle with betas. So why would they? How is that an upgrade? How is the alpha to beta an upgrade for women?
Basically, you toy around with the beta, and then you eventually need to settle, or you toy around with the alpha, and then you eventually just settle with the beta. So after it's basically you put a bunch of miles on the odometer, and then you decide, oh crap, I need to settle before I hit the wall, and that's where the beta comes in. That's pretty much the red pill mindset. They might also call it like dual mating. I think they might call it. Though again, I kind of reject the notion that hypergamy is driving the problem, because I mean you can go back to ancient times and hypergamy is a thing with dowries and marital commitments. So the idea of someone trying to marry at or above their social class, I mean that's Jane Austen's Pride and Prejudice. That's the entire that's the premise.
Right, because the Bennett family, right?
Yes.
Was in the minor gentry, and they were trying to marry in the major gentry.
Yes, they're trying to upgrade their daughter's outlook. I mean, if you go up to the sentence, I kind of talk about dating.
See, we can reference things other than The Wire and Sopranos here too. We can reference Jane Austen.
But I think basically you basically took off the restraints for sin, which getting pregnant is a restraint against sin.
So this statement about alphas, the women are with alphas and they're settling for betas after, they've toyed around or whatever, as you put it, kind of reminds me of the whole Jezebel complex where women, the Jezebel is going to want to find her Ahab. The Ahab is the beta. Ahab is a beta male in scripture. And Jezebel is the domineering sexual woman. So she dominates the Ahab. I see it more as a Jezebel complex, but not just strictly hypergamy.
And this is where I bring up the fact that like women under 30 cheat a little bit more than men, but it's like a 1% difference.
Okay.
So
that's going to be going up though. So you say, well, there might be anecdotes. The general trend is that women are more prone to infidelity than men are more prone to infidelity than women. The only age demographic where women are more prone to cheat is married women under 30, which is a whopping 1% difference. So this theory lacks statistical support. Married men over 50 are far likelier to cheat than women at rates above 20%, while women remain in the teens. And
yeah, I mean,
I wonder
under
why.
30, it's like 11% versus 10%. So women have 1% difference. Married men in their 20s are far more likely to cheat then. And that's so the infidelity comes way later.
Yet there's almost an assumption that alpha males or high value men are expected to cheat or perhaps are entitled to. Kevin Samuels called this a privilege to cheat, not because they should, but because high value men has that option. Even Pearl can be seen stating that high value men bring high value problems, which is a warning to any woman who would marry a high value man. It is unlikely she would hold the standard that infidelity should be expected when married to a so-called high-value woman. Logically, wealthy, powerful men have no shortage of women who might throw themselves at them. The temptation for sexual sin, namely that of adultery and fornication, are stronger for these so-called high-value men. Many of the underlying assumptions within the red pill community ultimately treat mankind as a glorified animal, yet ironically, they employ their either inconsistent standards or outright untrue assumptions towards the behaviors of men and women. So
And that's
now you.
So they do a lot of evolutionary framework, and that's one thing you'll see is very common in the Manosphere.
So we got a couple more paragraphs here. We got the iron rules of Tomasi. Rather than seek to change the landscape or elevate men, Rollo Tomasi instead offers his descriptive suggestions, which are called his 9 iron rules. He would contend that he is not prescriptive, but only descriptive. So people are allowed to disagree. Regardless, the rules are presented to promote promiscuity amongst men to combat the landscape to maximize sexual gratification. They are not fixated towards family formation or helping a man find a wife, which would actually be following the footsteps of Rollo, but instead helping men pick up loose women under the assumption that everyone is promiscuous. So, like you said, Rollo's living a certain kind of life that he's not pimping on his audience.
Pretty much.
Which you see that a lot in Hollywood, where these liberals, oftentimes of a certain demographic, they don't get divorced. They live very traditional marriages, very traditional family structure, but the values that they peddle are antithetical to the way they personally live. They peddle the degeneracy, but they live more conservatively. And that's what you see out of a lot of rich liberals. They're not all degenerates, but the poor liberals certainly are. That's just undeniable. So his first rule is basic. Frame is everything. Always be aware of subconscious balance of whose frame in which you are operating. Always control the frame, but resist giving the impression that you are. So this is like controlling the dynamics.
I mean, that's pretty much
not appearing as such.
Yeah, I mean, I just thought this was basic as far as how people interact, and this is again whether for politics or relationships, framing is the key. And I'm thinking of maybe I listen to a lot of Aaron McIntyre where he talks about the importance of framing in political discourse. So
I am very excited to watch Aaron McIntyre on John Harris's channel. Very excited for that. So I've yet to do that though, but
it's the same concept just with dating. And his last rule, which I don't include rule number 9, but that's don't self-deprecate in front of a woman. So if you need don't be George Costanza crying, don't self-deprecate.
I'm unemployed and I live with my parents.
Yeah. But that's, to me, that's the same thing as frame as everything. It's just you separate it out into a different rule.
And then you say rule 3 is most questionable. Any woman who makes you wait for sex or by her actions implies she is making you wait for sex, the sex is never worth the wait.
Now, keep in mind, when Rollo and Ruslan were doing their debate on the marriage, they did discuss these rules. And
And
Ruslan did.
Ruslan's married, right?
Yes, he did take issue with this rule as well.
If you're married, I don't see how you can't take issue with this rule, especially if you wait to get married before having sex. You're going to see this rule and say this is complete crap.
Yeah, and he tries to appeal to the principle of desirability, that the rule measures the desire. So, but it's, again, it's a very sexual rule. You can't necessarily, I don't think you can pigeonhole your way out of the promotion of promiscuity that the rules. And again, rule number 2, I think, is never under penalty of death reveal your sexual history to your woman. I think that was rule number 2. So I left that out of the article. There's one about don't live with a woman unless you're about to be married. So again, we're encouraging cohabitation,
which is, again, a huge factor in divorce. Like, you're 3 times more likely to get divorced if you cohabitate before getting married. Like, that's statistically, I believe it's 3 times. Red pill types might assert that a woman would have a different set of rules for an alpha versus a beta, but any woman that gives it away so easily is not a virtuous woman, regardless of the man. Even if this is about desirability, the sexual emphasis of the statement cannot be ignored.
And that's pretty much what the gist of the statement is, that, the woman should want to desire to have the husband. But, and again, the red pill community says, oh, the women have different rules for alphas than betas. If Andrew Tate is getting these women in bed, and then he's
lover boying them.
Yeah, he's lover boying them. He's wooing them. Basically, they would assert that women would treat Andrew Tate differently than they would the average Joe.
So the mindset behind these rules is not designed for marriage, but navigating hookup culture. Therein lies the contradiction in the manosphere. Because there is a view of women as object of sexual gratification combined with a low view of marriage, its promotion of fornication is inevitable, which then creates a feedback loop of adding to the body counts of women, furthering the sexual immorality. Even Andrew Tate, who has a somewhat positive message about masculinity, is contradicted by his lifestyle of promiscuity and his former webcam business that profited off of the weak simp culture he critiques. No amount of charm or well-articulated talking points erases the fact that he is the world's most infamous pimp. Yeah, again, I'm trying, and he calls himself a pimp because it's what was that? Positive influencing motivational person. Pimp.
Inspirational.
Yeah, it reminds me, since we have a lot of pop culture references tonight, it reminds me of that SpongeBob training video where it's like, poop, people order our patties. And it's like at a restaurant training video, and they're using poop as a acronym. It kind of reminds me of that. Was this? And gents, you're discussing red pill with a broad brush. Red pill in general is a metaphor from the Matrix, meaning that you see the world as what it is.
Yeah, and I do say that it's in the context of dating.
I think you are discussing a segment of red pill, Rolo, etc., which should be called PUA, Pickup Artist Community. And I think to some degree that is fair criticism, but
I guess red pill has so many uses. I mean, again, I do open up with that in the intro, that they call themselves the red pill.
Yeah, so we're just kind of using terms that they themselves use and have brought into. I mean, keep in mind, in 2017, the red pill community kind of meant something different. It was basically grifters like Candace Owens, who were complete liberals, all of a sudden calling themselves conservative and red pilled. So the popular usage of red pill has, shifted over the years.
No, I mean, it's co-opted by a bunch of groups because of the Matrix game.
Yes, because the Matrix is a popular, strangely, you could call it a right-wing movie, but it's also, some people also say it's a very Gnostic movie. It's kind of interesting to debate the theology at play there, because to some degree they rip off the Bible. They just kind of rip it off. But then the creators go and, transgender themselves because do you know why? because watching porn. That one of the creators of the Matrix came out and said, basically said that the obvious fact out loud that, he was watching this and then he got into it. He became the what he was watching, I guess. So, this type of, red pill community is not actually going to decrease this type of, it's not going to decrease what they don't want to see in the world. It might, give you your fill, but it's going to increase what you don't want to see in the world. It's not the whole be the change that you want to see in the world type of mindset. So this is your conclusion. The growing societal decay is met with pervasive sexual sin. While the state of modern women is abysmal, the red-pilled manosphere ultimately falls short of offering a solution that yields tangible benefits for both men and women, the former of which they purportedly seek to help. Because this segment of men is an enlarging share of our population, there is no shortage of grifters that will entertain the disaffected masses, like the unmarried Pearly Things or the monogamously married Rollo Tomasi. The church must be the beacon of light amidst nihilistic darkness. The church should be the place where relationships both are formed and thrive. There is a great emphasis for married couples that is often absent towards those who are single. Can you explain that for a second?
Like this would be like the church only focuses on married couples. They don't necessarily focus on those that are single and helping them out. And they'll just say, "Oh, the gift of singleness." So that's kind of
okay. So whereas the mantra that singleness is a gift is likened to the Apostle Paul, who is unmarried, which does not mean he never was married. Is more likely.
Keep in mind, I took that from MacArthur's commentary.
This is more likely to be the exception rather than normative.
So Paul could have been a widower, technically, according to the Greek.
And it's also worth noting that a lot of what he's writing is about the impending doom for Jews in Jerusalem. So when he talks about, me not being married and that possibly being a good thing, it's also because he knows what's going to happen. I think he's keenly aware of what's going to happen. So churches should fixate towards promoting and fostering relationships which lead to marriage. Meanwhile, marriage and family should be promoted to young women within the church, that they should not be like the worldly women, just as men should not be as the worldly men. But if the church does not answer this challenge, more young men will be turned over to the red-pilled manosphere types who claim to offer a solution to their legitimate struggles. These struggles, left unmitigated, give way to pornography, despair, and further societal strife. Barring correction, the masculinity crisis in the West will exacerbate the troubling circumstances, ultimately to the deserved condemnation of entire societies. In the end, if America is to be revived, then it will be because churches developed masculine men who forged strong families which raised their children in the fear and admonition of the Lord, not because the perfect political candidate was elected. That's how you conclude. Again, strong writing. Let's catch up with some chat. Let me check the Rumble sphere. I don't see anything on the Rumble sphere. So nothing on Rumble. And then we have Sebastian says standards are too low for most churches to care about dudes banging a bunch of chicks and being degen. They are more concerned with dudes being homo or trans walking in, unless they already have gay or trans pastors. So I guess are you saying that?
I mean, the churches care more about this issue.
They care more about not offending these people walking in than they do about not offending or not confronting, the degenerates that are fornicating. Is that kind of what you're saying? And then WT Foxtrot, 2003. Some of the red pill content creators have advocated taking the state out of marriage out of the marriage business because no fault divorce is in effect male fault divorce. So males are opting out of marriage. And again, you can go first on this.
I mean, I get it. Like, there's a sentiment that the reason men aren't seeking marriage is because, you know, they're basically, instead of like being unemployed, they're basically opting out of labor force participation. They're using, to use more of an economic metaphor, they're just not even in the market for marriage. And I might question how true that is, because I think a lot of men are seeking. It's just, you know, they're disaffected because they're not finding, or a lot of these women are, you know, undesirable, whether, you know, for aesthetic reasons, whether for the fact, I mean, the fact that liberals are more, or women are more liberal by a percentage of like 15% than their male counterparts under 30. I mean, that's going to impact the ability of relationships to form. I mean, simply the fact that they're more liberal.
I mean, and that's becoming more of a deal breaker in the dating market these days. I wanted to comment on this because taking the government out of marriage isn't, I don't think that's a biblical solution whatsoever. First of all, even if you want to, you know, be in the libertarian fantasy world, you got to recognize the order of operations when it comes to reducing the size of government. You got to get rid of the income tax and basically every federal benefit, welfare benefit that's based on FPL percentage, or federal poverty line percentage. So FPL. So you have to get rid of every single program that's related to FPL. And then you can get rid of the institution of marriage, because the institution of marriage is how the government defines FPL and household poverty. So I don't think that's realistic. The other thing is, it's the government's duty to recognize marriage. I think that's their duty. Like, the government doesn't have the authority on marriage because God gave that to the family. So there's the sphere of sovereignty and the sphere of families who marriage belongs to. It doesn't belong to the church and it doesn't belong to the government. It belongs to the family. So that much I don't think is the solution. But I do think that no at-fault divorce should become the norm. That should be what's reinstated nationwide, and get rid of no-fault divorce. Candace Owens a grifter. I mean, in 2017, she was just saying what white people were saying before her. But she was a black woman, so she said what white guys were saying and got a lot of views. But more of a history lesson, look up Candace Owens' social autopsy. She became famous on the right because of this social autopsy. And she got in bed with the Gamergate chicks. And she had a falling out with them, and then used the people on the right wing who comforted her during her falling out with the Gamergate chicks over social autopsy to build her audience and brand. So that's the origin story of Candace Owens. And Sebastian follows up with the question. I just feel like they don't focus on promoting marriage or not being promiscuous because standards are so low. So yeah, and I think you're right, because it's so normative that, you know, people in the church are fornicating. It's so normative that they don't address it because that would offend people.
Well, I mean, I would think, and again, this would be probably a global problem, is we've lost the sense that marriage, procreation, child rearing, these are all duties as well as things you do. Like, we don't get the sense that, having children, like, you know, how many pastors would condemn a married couple that said, we don't want kids ever? And let's assume that they're perfectly capable.
I think that's immoral, and unbiblical to be a dink.
Yeah, I mean, I would go as far as to say it's sinful. I mean, again, the idea that procreation is a moral duty both to the family and to God, because again, the first thing, be fruitful and multiply. And then you can look throughout scripture where I mean, Judah and Tamar, even though there's more of a Christological implication there, that, you know, the idea that if you're basically trying to sabotage your ability to procreate, that's a sin. Which, you know, two of Judah's sons died learning that lesson.
Right. Because Onan had to do a pull-out game That's why he got smited or smote, because he did that. He tried to mess with the institution of marriage.
And then if you go to Deuteronomy 20, I believe that's where you get the laws that a man who just married his wife is allowed to basically take a season off from war. So this is the idea that yes,
he can enjoy the first fruits.
Yes, he can enjoy the first fruits. The idea that the marriage is more important than his individual duty to the army or to the military,
to his nation.
Yes. So it is a duty to your community as well as.
All right. I'll read these comments and finish up. The U.S. government only got involved into the marriage business to perform race mixing. I don't really know if that's true. I mean, the Lover case in Virginia was what, 1969, but I don't know enough about that, so can't really comment on that. But I'm gonna read it because I'm not afraid to. Before Sebastian says before no fault divorce, it made way more sense. But it's such a risk for a guy to get married now, and that's what they want. That's part of the agenda.
I think this was Andrew Tate in the Tucker interview where he talks like, before, if you're in the Matrix, because again, it's a Matrix metaphor, that, if you go back to the 50s, if you were plugged in, you got a wife, you got a car, you got a house, your 2-car house, you could have a life in the suburbs, the cookie cutter neighborhood, the American dream, all that lovely
now
stuff.
Inflation's like doubled.
Well, now you get none of that.
Oh,
stuff.
Okay. Sorry. Okay. WT Fox said to prevent race mixing. Okay, that's a lot different than what you said. That's a lot different than what you said. Okay.
So basically, before, if you go back again, going back to the 50s, you could actually have the American dream by being plugged in, so to speak. Now you get none of those things. You don't get you can't find a wife. Cars are vastly more expensive. Real estate is virtually
TVs
unaffordable.
are cheaper though.
Yeah, TVs
have gone down.
So real estate's virtually unaffordable.
Yeah, and the boomer generation, they had high interest rates, but they had low, housing costs.
The principal as a percentage.
We have high principal, high housing costs, and high interest now. So we have the worst of both worlds. And I think the boomers had it better because, yes, it's usury, but it's still super affordable at the end of the day.
Speaking of usury, good time to plug the NAM article. And, I'm willing to make the argument that, church planting organizations charging interest to churches is in fact sinful. So check that out.
Yeah, I think Jesus had something to say, don't lend to a brother, but give freely. And then WT Foxtrot 2023. Most of the females in the manospheres are grifters because they are all just parroting male talking points. And that's Pearl Davis to a T.
Yeah. I mean, there might be some exceptions, but they probably might not identify as manosphere. All
right. Well, that was the last of the comments. I do just want to say, support Evangelical Dark Web at evangelicaldarkweb.org/join. This is that Patreon-like system. We built our own Patreon because Patreon censors. And you get more access to more content. I do some exclusive content for the subscribers and supporters at evangelicaldarkweb.org. And we also have an upcoming book that's going to be called Winning Not Winsome, 10 Commandments for Spiritual Warfare. So look forward to that coming out. I am the biggest delay on doing that because I am not good at this author stuff that's post production, if you know what I'm saying. I'm not good at that stuff. I'm the type of guy that does a project, completes a project, and then moves on to the next project. But that's not how this process works. You have to actually keep going back to the project that you think you finished. So with that said, thanks everybody for watching. Don't forget to hit the like button on your way out and have a blessed day. And if you listened this long and haven't subscribed yet, shame on you. You should subscribe. Just kidding. And have a blessed day, and we will catch you on